Good morning, Capital Region. This is Dayton Maxwell, Farm Business Management Educator with the CAAHP team. Just reaching out to you from my home base in Jackson, New York. If you are one of my former students, I'm sure you're thinking that Maxwell told us he would never ever film himself on video or use Facebook. But given the circumstances, got to do it. Anyway, I'm reaching out to you this morning to kind of talk a little bit about business management as you go forward in the next few months. As you know, since people are home, their spending habits are changing, and they're not out doing things. The economy has slowed down in general, and me and some other folks are kind of anticipating this is going to make its way back to the production farm and the retail business. So just some planning as you go forward thinking about this situation. One of the things you want to make sure is that your business has plenty of liquidity. And what liquidity is the ability of a business to meet short-term goals as they become due, or the ability to transfer an asset into cash. So the thing that you want to make sure is that you have enough cash to get through the upcoming months. And just some things to think about. You may want to maintain some cash on hand, and I know you income tax folks that are always worried about income taxes don't like to have cash on hand, but I encourage you to do that because you may need it as your prices that you receive either from your commodity that you're selling or through retail sales. If they're down, you may need to have more cash on hand, so please think about that. If some people owe you money, accounts receivable, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and say, hey, can you pay me? Feel free to chase those accounts receivable a little more than you normally would. If you have some inventories that are quickly or readily able to be turned into cash, like if you have some cattle that can be sold quickly, turned into cash, fantastic. If you have some crops that can be turned into cash quickly, fantastic. I'd encourage you to think about your crops a little bit, because a lot of times we hold a huge crop inventory on hand for a year or two, sometimes 2 years of inventory on hand, and that inventory cannot be readily turned to cash. So when you're thinking about your liquidity, possibly don't include your full crop inventory if you can't turn it to cash right away. The other thing you may want to do is do some prepays with your vendors. If you do have that cash and you want to prepay your suppliers, for example, your feed or your seed or things like that you see coming, and you know you have the money now and you know those expenses will be there, go ahead and do some prepaying. So that's kind of the short-term asset side of liquidity. If you think about the liability side, one of the things that you definitely want to do is have your vendors paid in full, have no open accounts. And I know that's always a challenging thing, but if you can do that, get your vendors paid in full. And like I previously said, you may want to do some prepaying with them, just so you have that cushion there. The other thing you may want to do is what I would call strategic debt reduction. And strategic debt reduction is simply paying down debt that you have the ability or the capacity to reborrow. And you can reborrow that money to pay operating expenses. All right, so if you're thinking about becoming more liquid in these times, just to review, keep cash on hand, chase down your receivables if you need to, look at your inventory and see what can be readily turned to cash, and do some prepaying with your vendors if that's something you think you can do. And keep your accounts current. Again, always a challenging thing, but get your accounts current or even prepaid, and strategically pay down debt so that you can use that money for future operating expenses, again, reborrowing that debt. And as we conclude, I'm going to set the flowers down. As we conclude, the thing to focus on is business liquidity as this economy slows down. And again, liquidity is the ability of a business to meet short-term obligations as they become due. And in this case, we think about short-term obligations as your 12-month expenses. All right, over and out, 10-4. It's my pleasure to serve you. May your family be safe and well during this time.